So you want to be the best driver on the road, huh? You want to be like Moses, and as you're driving, the Red Sea parts? Well, strap in, I can teach you how. 3 things you don't understand about defensive driving. Let me tell you guys everything this video is not. I'm not going to be talking about driving correctly, making sure your car is well maintained and using your indicators, not speeding and driving like a twat. The reason for this video is because there's a few elements of defensive driving that I think are often overlooked or not really talked about, and I want to go a bit in depth on those specific topics. I've got 3 main ones in mind, but first, when you bought your car, did you go and check if it was stolen, scrapped, written off, had the mileage clocked back? Well, you should with Carvertical. Use my discount code MICDRIVES for 20% off your Carvertical reports. The cool thing about these is that you can reuse them. If you check a car that has no issues, you get the credits refunded. So as long as you keep checking good cars, you could just use those credits forever. Check your car, check your mate's car, check everyone's car. Let's have a look at one of these reports now. I've got a report of an Audi A8 here, and if you saw this car for sale, you might think it's a good car. You'll see. It's not crash damaged, it's not stolen, but this car does have a hidden history, all the way up to 378,000 miles, and then the mileage was rolled back to 142,000 miles. Unscrupulous sellers will be trying to pass this car off as just an, average to high mileage car when it's almost got 400,000 miles on it. And you wouldn't know this unless you ran a Carvertical report. Once again, Mick Drives, 20% off your Carvertical reports. Let's get back to talking about defensive driving. So firstly, what is defensive driving? People will use terms like driving as though everyone out there is out to kill you. And I guess that makes sense. The textbook definition, according to Google AI, defensive driving is to drive in a manner to avoid accidents. I have a slightly different one. Driving with responsibility such that any accident you have is your fault. It's taking ownership of every possible thing you could do to avoid issues on the road. I'll give you guys an example. This is actually my wife's first car, and she'll often come home and she'll tell me stories like, Mick, there was this guy that pulled out in front of me on a national speed limit road, or Mick, there was this guy that did this dangerous overtake and it was a really close near miss. And my response is almost always, what could you have done to improve the situation? Here's what I want you guys to understand. If you have an crash, it actually doesn't matter whose fault it was. You're going to feel the negative effects on your life of that crash. Whether it be your car is inoperable, your insurance is going to be affected because you've been involved in a crash, you might not have a car to use if you don't have a courtesy car. None of these are good outcomes. At best, you'll have the inconvenience of repairing the car. At worst, you will be hurt, even if the crash was 100% the other person's fault. So it's in your own best interest to avoid crashes. So defensive driving is at all times trying to avoid this situation. And importantly, putting your own ego away and making the road system work better for everyone, even if at that time it doesn't make it better for you. I'll give you guys one story. I have only ever had a crash once in my life, and it was 100% not my fault. A lot of people will be surprised by this. Oh, Mick drives cars is the guy that drives very quickly on the road and dangerous. The one time that I have had a crash, I was rear-ended at a red light. I was driving my Mini. It was a 2-lane road. There was a roundabout and there was a set of traffic lights. It was green. I was going 30 miles an hour. There was a guy tailgating me. The lights went amber. I hesitated, thinking I was going to go through them, and then I used my brakes and slowed down and stopped right on the line. He stupidly tried to swerve around me into the next lane and go past me, but just clipped the back of my Mini. 100% his fault. Do you know what it did to my life? Absolutely broke my heart, because that was one of my favorite cars I ever owned. I had to get it repaired, and the repair job was not perfect, and it bothered me forever, and I ended up selling that car. I lost one of my favorite cars I've ever owned. Now, I often think back to that situation and think, what could I have done differently? Well, maybe if I didn't hesitate and I just immediately broke and stopped at the traffic lights, he might be more inclined to stop with me. Maybe it was the hesitation that invited him to try and come along. Now, do you see what I'm doing here? I'm doing a thought experiment where I blame myself for the crash. That was 100% the other person's fault. And the reason I'm doing this is because I would have much rather not crashed. So in any situation, no matter how little your fault it is, isn't it just better to not crash? Yes, obviously. So do that. Let's get into the actual on-the-road examples of defensive driving, starting with space. Space is really important on the road, but anytime I see people speaking about space, it's always from a perspective of talking about following distance. And there's lots of different types of space. You have space around your car in all directions. Right now, my space is taken up by this car next to me. Here's an excellent example of space at a roundabout. Me and this car next to me are going to enter this roundabout at the same time. What I want to do is let him go a little bit in front so that we're not side by side around the roundabout. Now, why would you do that? Why do you not want to be side by another car? Well, that's where a lot of accidents happen. If somebody makes a mistake and you're side by side with them, crashes happen. So at all times you should be trying to preserve your side-by-side space. What that basically means is you never want to be next to another car. I'm going to brake a bit more aggressively so he can go in before I go in. So we're not side-by-side. Just so that if he changes his mind, does something weird, and tries to cut back across and go left, he has the space to do it. And people would think that's mad, right? You're giving people space to do the wrong thing. That's exactly what defensive driving is all about. Giving the people the space to make mistakes. I'll also give you guys a tip for space. Whenever there's a problem car, you always want them in front of you. Like this learner, for example. This learner being behind me, I have no control over what is going to happen with that learner. If he's going to rear end me, if he's going to do something weird, if he's going to cause an issue. If he's in front of me and I give him enough space, I can control everything about the situation. No matter how much he fucks up and causes headaches and causes issues, I'm in control because I can stay away from him. Space is also important not just for cars but for pedestrians. And space is related to speed. If you have less space, you have to have less speed. On these tight roads where people are trying to cross the street, doing a bunch of weird stuff, you can give yourself more space by just driving slower. At this following distance and this speed, there is no reason I could ever possibly have a crash, because I can stop before any weird headaches happen. I've got more time to plan ahead. I've got more visibility. I can see further. Even here, space is huge when you've got traffic. If you leave a bigger gap, you don't have to stop and start and stop and start. And this avoids accidents because every time you stop is a time you've got to look in the mirror and make sure you're not being rear-ended by the guy behind you. If you just leave a bigger gap when these guys are all braking and stopping, you don't need to. Now, following distance is an element of space. Leaving more following distance is beneficial in almost every way. It gives you more time to slow down when the car in front slows down. That's the most important one. But it's not just for safety, it's also for fuel economy. If you can slow down more gently, you can make better use of engine braking, which gets you better fuel economy. It's also smoother. It's just a much better way to drive. Look, the brake lights are on. I've just lifted off the accelerator and I'm going to slow down gently. People are very eager to close space. Whenever people have space in front of them, it's almost like they want to close the gap as soon as possible. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. They say the vast majority of human communication is non-verbal. The biggest part of it is body language. You can read what somebody is gonna say or is thinking just based on their body language. And cars on the road are exactly the same. You can read what other people are gonna do based on the positioning and the body language of their cars. And other people can read what you're gonna do based on how you position your car. Look at car communication. I can tell this guy is either just about to leave or just stopped. He has actually just stopped, but did you see the space that I left him? in order for him to come out. That's better than me closing the gap and then him trying to come out and us having an awkward situation. Here's another example. The driver behind me is quite eager. You can't see any part of her car apart from her face in the rearview mirror. That's not good. I don't like that situation. I don't want that. So how do I resolve it? Well, I actually take even more space, because now I've got to make up space for the car behind me. If the car behind you is really close, you want to give yourself even more margin for error. Margin for error will come up later in this video. Also, being deliberate with your own communication cues. If there's no reason, there's no one around, you don't need to indicate off a roundabout, right? But when it's busy, when there are cars around, when there is somebody to benefit, you should throw that indicator on, make it obvious what you want to do. Equally, this is why it's really important to be in the right lane, because people are going to make these decisions around you, whether they're thinking about it like we are in this video, or they're just doing it subconsciously. We need to make our intentions very clear about what we want to do. So we need to know, okay, we're going second exit on the roundabout, that means we're going to need the left lane, but no indicator. The super fundamental basics, you have to get those right. You can't be driving defensively if you're the one making mistakes and you're the one causing issues. You can read communication from the car behind. You can look at the gap I've left, look at the gap they've left. What's the communication there? Well, the car behind me is in a rush. They want to get somewhere. What does that mean? Well, I can't be hesitating and I need to be very clear with where I'm going. So at this roundabout, I'm turning right. I'm not going to move into the middle of the road. I'm going to stay right on this side of the road so they know my intentions are very clear. I'm going to throw on the indicator and make it incredibly obvious where it is I'm going. Making your intentions clear and obvious is just as important as having the skills to read other people's. And bear in mind, all this communication stuff, it really does come with time. I've been driving the best part of more than 10 years now. So a lot of this stuff starts to come naturally. You start to have this almost inner voice that just predicts what other people are going to do based on subtle cues about how they're positioning their car. But that comes with time, that comes with a lot of experience and seeing people do weird shit. I threw on a left indicator there. Why? Because I don't want this red car confused about where I'm going. I'm going straight. A lot of people would never throw on an indicator there. They'll be like, oh, it makes no sense. But if I'm going straight first exit, I'll throw on the indicator. Just let that red car know, no, I'm not going anywhere else. I'm not even thinking about going right. I'm making it so obvious to you where I'm going. That is good communication on the road. Now, margin for error. I've specifically left this one till last because it feeds into everything else that we've already spoken about. This is the one that will impact you on country roads, even more so than in towns and cities. And it's all about thinking about the possible errors you and everyone else could make and giving yourself an extra 10% so that even if the worst should happen, you'll still be okay. When you're driving quickly on the road, on country roads like this, you're taking corners, you're enjoying your car, you have to leave enough room so that if there's a bit of oil on the corner, you don't die, right? I can quite easily take this corner at 60 miles an hour. Well, if it's dry and nice, I'll probably be fine. If it's wet and rainy and dark and can't see what's coming up very well, maybe I should think twice about it. Equally for overtakes. Now, we all know we should be able to do the overtake in half the distance we see clear. I've done a whole video about overtakes. But can you leave an extra 10% just in case something happens? Just in case you go for the overtake and it's the one day your turbo decides to die on you and now you don't have a turbo when you're going for the overtake. Random things will happen as you're driving, and it's your job to allow for them. Margin for error feeds into everything else as well. When you're thinking about how much space to leave an extra car length. If you've misjudged it, the extra car length will put you where you should be. And if you got it right, well then the one extra car length doesn't matter. You're not going to get there any later because you left an extra car length. Nobody cares. But that extra car length could be the difference between stopping in time, between there being enough space to get around an issue, between there being enough space for someone on the other side of the road to complete an overtake. Even if they're in the wrong and they've done a stupid thing, that extra space will be the difference. Within that margin for error, there's also your decision making. I'm gonna need a good gap to get around this car. He's going 50 miles an hour roughly. That's gonna add about 10% to my journey. My journey's 23 minutes. That's gonna add roughly 2 minutes to my journey. Is it really worth it? These are the decisions that you have to make. And sometimes driving defensively is just not taking action because it's not worth it. Just take the 2 minutes penalty. Come on. You know what channel this is. You see, those are the situations. Do you know what? I'm gonna leave that in the video because it's such a beautiful example of why defensive driving is important. I was just talking about how it's pointless to do that overtake because there's not a lot of good situations to do it. And then I went for it, and the exact bad situation that I was worried about happened. That was not defensive driving, that was aggressive driving. Such a perfect example of what not to do. YouTube really thinks you're going to enjoy this video, but I think this video about advanced driving techniques on the road is actually a better choice. My name's Mick, I drive cars. Peace.